700 rejection letters over those years. So it took a very long time, and trust me, possible to get a publisher. Even the nice ones can bring you down because they're so nice. It's still a rejection. I went to go and see a medium, a very good medium, and she was absolutely incredible. And she told me, well, you've got it. It's in your family. And so I started to investigate it.
Today's guest is my dear friend Philip Kinsella, a clairvoyant medium and UFO investigator and author. Having had many bizarre UFO paranormal experiences throughout his life, along with his identical twin brother Ronald, he began researching the phenomena on a serious level of investigations after an alien abduction in 1989. This led him to writing several books, which include Twin Souls, Passage Through Eternity, Researching the Divine, and I have many of Philip's books, and I'm very proud to say, and I've got a handful here, more than a handful, so many, and his latest book, You the Public Deceived, The Grand UFO Deception. Philip won the British Medium Award in 2008. Although he had no wish to become what is referred to a medium, he was nevertheless intrigued in the thought of the deceased being able to communicate with the living. He has appeared on national television, Channel 4, Central, Live and Digital. Philip, along with his brother, co-hosts the radio program of the Paranormal UFO radio called Twin Souls. Welcome, Philip.
Hello, Anita. How are you? It's lovely to be on your show. Thank you very much.
I'm great, thank you, and it's my pleasure to have you on. What is one of the most courageous things you have done?
One of the most courageous things I've ever done was to keep believing and keep pushing. And I'll make an example of that, and it had everything to do with our writing. And although you've given me an esteemed, glowing reference, it was by no means easy. I'll explain that when my identical twin brother Ronald and myself were very young, I'd say roughly about 6 or 7, we wanted to draw and be artists, but we also got involved with our writing as well too, which was incredible. I remembered this dream starting out when we were age 16, and we did these little books all about Professor Howard and Co., an imaginary family that were very rich with a cantankerous professor who wanted to wreak havoc with his inventions. Then subsequently met a lovely lady called Eileen M. Pickering, who lives in Clapham, Bedford, and she is an author of Western books, and she writes under the name of Mark Falcon, and she's published by Black Horse Westerns, which is a big publishing company in London. And she, at that point, ran something called Writer's Own magazine, and she did her own publishing program. And she was the first lady who really believed in myself and my brother, and with regards to our illustrating and our books. And she subsequently brought out Professor Howard and Co. Back in the late 80s, then a book called Lady Alexandra and Co. And those two were published under her cottage industry imprint. But one of the things I could never believe was just how difficult it was to actually be recognized and contracted by a publisher. And that took almost 20 years.
Wow.
And 700 rejection letters over those years. So it took a very long time. And trust me, I always say to anyone who is aspiring to new levels within themselves is if there's one of the messages I give out to them is never give up, even though there is great adversity. And of course, Anita, back in the day, back in the 80s and the 90s, it was almost impossible to get a publisher.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, that's like a number of rejections. So how do you cope with rejection and overcoming, especially when you want to be a writer? You've got this dream of being a writer, and like you said, from a young age as well.
That's right.
Those experiences.
It was very tough and very difficult. I mean, what we were doing, my brother and I were doing, was literally a production line. These were primarily to begin with children's books. And of course, as everyone knows, trying to break into the children's market is almost nigh impossible. What we would do is that we would we got a book called the Writers and Artists Yearbook, and we would go through there and find the publishers and the editors and write personal letters to them. And we'd send about 5 or 6 off every month. Mm-hmm. And this led then to every week. As there were rejection letters were coming back, we were then sending them off again. And what you would do, because editors in publishing houses would change positions very quickly. When you come back on that publisher again after about 6 months, you write again under a new editor's name. So it was this cycle of going around and around and recycling. We had some very positive reviews, and I remembered the very, very first manuscript that my brother and I wrote. Andrew, it was called Uncle Mad Builds Madeline, which was a very earlier version of what would become Professor Harold.
Okay.
And our grandmother sent this book off to Hodder and Stoughton publishers. We were still at school, and she'd sent it off, one of the biggest publishing companies in the world. And I remembered when she phoned us, and we were really expectant, and she read out the rejection letter. And I remembered I sat on the stairs and cried my eyes out. The very first rejection letter, I have all my rejection letters, and of course the manuscript, looking back now, no wonder they rejected it. But of course, it was a dream. And I think that when you have a dream, when you have something that really means something to you, one of the courageous things is to try to overcome all those negative reviews, all those negative letters, or even the nice ones can bring you down because they're so nice. It's still a rejection. We just kept going and kept pushing and driving ourselves forward until 20 years later, I had written a psychic book called Reaching for the Divine, and that had then been with Catalban Publishing Company here in England, being decided. And Ronald and I, well, it was more Ronnie's children's book than mine. I contributed towards it, called The Rock Bottom Twins, which was with Pegasus Books in Cambridge. And I remembered the day when I'd been at work and I was very low, thinking, oh my Lord, how much longer can I deal with these rejections? And I remembered it was a Monday when I came home, and there was a letter on the side, and I opened it. Catalban Publishing, that had Reaching for the Divine, said that they wanted to make an offer to publish the book, and I remembered sitting there with the letter, and I cried my eyes out. I could not believe it. It was a contract. And then the very next day, when I went back to work and I was celebrating and everyone was very happy, a phone call came through from my brother to say that the Rock Bottom Twins had been accepted by Pegasus Books.
Wow.
So we waited all those years. And then, of course, television got involved about Anglia. They did a feature on it. And then we featured in, as you know, the local press, and its heading was 700 to 800 rejection letters. And then, of course, 2 contracts between 2 books come one day apart from the other with identical twins. And it was a very proud moment. But it also came with a feeling of absolute relief. And what I'll say to you is that once you have a publisher, they don't just want one book, they want more than one book from you. So, and so this is why and how we started to develop. And also the interest and help from many authors as well, too. And I must boast a little here, because Ronnie had written to Stephen King, the horror novelist, and his secretary wrote back, and Stephen King kept his artwork of these reptiles. And we also had the encouragement and help of, and who is also a literary mentor, David Saperstein. Now, David Saperstein wrote Cocoon, that was made into a Hollywood film in 1985. And he also wrote Cocoon, Metamorphosis, and Butterfly, which was like a trilogy, but they only made the first film, and the second film they made, Cocoon The Return, was nothing to do with him. But he aspired us, even back before we were published, to say, keep going. It took him an energy that he thought he'd never possessed, and 19 rejection letters Cocoon went through before it was finally accepted. And of course, Ron Howard, who used to star in Happy Days, became a film director and made the beautiful film that we know of today, a beautiful film. And also Kenny Johnson, creator of V, the 10-hour miniseries, and The Incredible Hulk, The Bionic Woman. Ronnie had been in touch with him and is in regular contact with him now and again because we're his fans. And he allowed Ronnie to include most of his stuff about V, his information in my brother's book, The Digital Demon. So, also John Christopher, the author of the Tripods trilogy, a children's author, was also in contact with us. So there's been a lot, that's just a few. We've had a lot of, praise and help and encouragement from other writers, from other producers. So what I say to anyone out there is that, you have a dream.
Yes.
And if the dream is within the heart, where it really must come from, trust me in this, that there is always hope. Because it's not just about knowing someone who knows someone, but it's very interesting to see how life develops and moves you into these other areas. So my brother and I, have a lot of people to thank, not just our friends and family, but also those in the world that, have done it themselves.
Yeah.
So I think it's really lovely that we have this help from our mentors, our peers, our inspirers, our gods, as it were. We take it too far saying gods because they are human, but when you're younger, you admire them, you look up to them, and I think that is a beautiful, wonderful thing.
That's excellent. And like you say, you've got to have a dream and you've got to clench to it and you've got to keep working no matter how many rejections. You've got to keep going for it. And
oh yes,
you will get there in the end, which you have
yes.
clearly displayed. And it's absolutely fantastic. You have written so many books and they are phenomenal. They really are fantastic.
Thank you. And, I always say, my great interest now is, of course, within the psychic development, consciousness, and also the other areas of investigation that people say aren't real, but we know that are. But I think the drive also with regards to reaching out, not just to those people who then become part of your family, as it were, but also continuing with that dream. And yes, you will have your ups, you will have your downs, you'll have your good days, you'll have your bad days. You'll find some days where you can't write or you've got a little bit of a block. And I always say to people, if that happens, take some time out, listen to some music, watch a film, read a good book, detach yourself from it, and then eventually you'll come back round. But you'll find that with a lot of people who are really up there, I mean, we're not up there, we're kind of like it's still in the cesspit, because in any commercial pursuit...
with that, Philip.
Well, I just think that, within any commercial pursuit, there's enough room for everyone. And of course, there's so many other people wanting to drive towards that. But everyone is unique and there is enough room on this planet for everyone. So, again, I say that, if someone thinks or tells you it's virtually impossible, I like a line from a film. It was a film called The Black Hole that was created by Disney. I think back in 1979, I remember I saw that. And Professor Reinhardt in the film said a line that I've never forgotten because someone said to him in the film that it was impossible. And he turned around and he said, the word impossible only resides within the dictionary for fools. And I kind of thought that just said everything, which meant that there is no such thing as impossible. There may be improbable, but not impossible. And I think with a centralized belief system and also a real power and need to drive yourself, yes, that is what this is about.
So yes, absolutely. And I think everything you've just said is spot on. Keep going, keep going. There is no impossible. And
yes, that's right.
So really, from a journey of wanting to write and being an author and being a medium, how did that fall into place? Because like you said, you had no intention of becoming a medium.
No, none at all. And what happened was that I was at that point a little bit later in my life when some very bizarre experiences had happened to me that people had, would class as something quite bizarre like UFOs. I was very much into UFO study after an experience that I won't go into here that I had in 1989. And subsequent to that, there have been some other experiences, especially with our maternal grandmother. But what actually really did it for me was that when our maternal grandmother had passed over to the other side on the same month and same year as Princess Diana, I went to go and see a medium, a very good medium, and she was absolutely incredible. And she told me, well, you've got it. It's in your family. And so I started to investigate it. And she told me, she said, you're going to be back in 2 years' time for me to develop you. And I thought, no. I remembered when I had the reading with her that lasted for 2 hours, I sat in my car, put my head on the steering wheel and cried because I couldn't believe it. My grandmother had come through. And subsequent to that, I was interested in discarnate communication and how it worked. what the process was. Was it real or was it something conjured? And I began to realize that the phenomena is very, very real. And then I wrote my first book, of course, was Reaching for the Divine, because I wanted to explore this. And subsequent to that, Reaching for the Divine, that was published by Couple Band years ago now, was very successful. And I then led on with Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena, because exploring the UFO phenomena told me categorically that we're dealing with aspects of perhaps interdimensional communication, while all along we're looking for nuts and bolts syndrome. And I think and feel that it's fair to say that although people are chasing ghosts and chasing UFOs, I think what we're dealing with is something that operates on higher levels of vibrational reality. And subsequent to that, this is what led me into the research that I've been involved in for many, many years now, and with esteemed researchers in America and England, and scientists, scholars. So my brother and myself are very, very humbled and very honored to be connected in this group, because we don't have any answers. We know the reality is there. And I do joke, especially with the UFO phenomena, after all these decades, we still have a blank page. But we can theorize. And that's what I do now. I have to boast again and say I was credited with a revolutionary theory that was published in a magazine called Alien Encounters back in 1996, I believe it was, in issue 3, in the September issue. And at that point then, I hadn't been published with a book until many years later. So I am more involved now in the theoretical dynamics of this phenomena and trying to put the pieces together to see what we may be dealing with. So that is where my interest as well concerning the psychic phenomena really came to fore, just around the time that my maternal grandmother had passed over, because she came to me the actual night that she made her passing.
Wow.
And that was incredible, and something I've never forgotten. So although we live in a material plane that's very harsh and very difficult and filled with competition and a lot of negativity as well, we have to address that. There are a lot of good people out there as well that we have to understand, that realize that we are much more than flesh and blood entities with a sell-by date. This is what really drives my passion and my research now going forward.
Yeah, I can really hear it. And I think that's fantastic. Like you just make a good point in saying we're not just the flesh and body.
Yes, that's right.
Absolutely.
Yes, we're much more than it.
Yeah.
I think, talking about inspiration and through perseverance, we have to understand that the brain itself is a mechanism, a transmitter and receiver, not just there to control the workings of the human body, but consciousness is amazing.
Yes.
And what happens is that when you open up to a belief, a lot of strange things begin to happen, because from birth till death, we are programmed to believe what is right and what is wrong, what is real. But we also have inspiration. And when you are inspired, something happens. It's almost as if, your whole mind begins to open up. And people call it imagination, as though imagination is a little box inside your brain that's open and closes now again. No. Imagination is reality, but on different levels of energy. And I feel that we draw this in when we are inspired, and we feel the need to become creative. And I think that's very important. People need to realize that music, films are very inspirational.
Yes.
And they move us. They change us. We see things. We see things in different ways, and we see things from different perspectives.
Absolutely.
And I think being humans in this life, we're all individual, but I believe they're all connected to the same source. That we're just experiencing this life as an individual, walking through it and building upon memory and experiences through this life that perhaps I think may, be sent back to the force or the Godhead and expand upon the creation process. We don't know. We can only assume that to be the case. But certainly inspiration and feeling inspired. And I think it's important that we have other people in life to look up to. A lot of things, unfortunately, in the world today is very negative and, bringing people down. But I grew up with my heroes. I grew up with my heroines. I looked up to people. And I think not in an egotistical level from their perspective, but I think that's very, very important, that we have to have something or someone to look up to, because, there are people bigger than us. And it's really lovely when those people And it gets me real here when they hold up their hands and they lift you up. They're like, you coming with me, I'm going to help you. That is the most amazing thing that can ever happen in life, when you have people who believe in you, who are there to help you, to assist you, to lift you up and say, you're doing a great job. Let's give you a bit of a hand. Come into my circle. And it's like, wow. Obviously, you have to earn your stripes. You've got what you put in, you get out. We have to understand that inspiration, belief, and strength also is another area that you need to push yourself forward. So whatever ideas you have, even if you want to be a writer of fiction or non-fiction, however radical they may be, however impossible, and as we said before, there is no such thing as impossible, but impossible that you feel, no. You just have to keep pushing. Many great writers have said that they started from the bottom and worked their way up, and no one like J.K. Rowling could see to begin with all of the rejection letters that she had. They only can see the success that she built. Good on her. Good luck to her. They don't see the other part. And I think it's more fascinating when you find out about individuals and what they've strived towards, what the difficulties they've been through, because it gives other people inspiration. It gives us the strength to say, well, they've been through it and I'm been through it,
Absolutely. And that's the thing. We've all got to go on our separate paths, but we can encourage each other, be alongside people that will help us. And like you say, it's inspiring each other. And there is enough room in this world for each and every one of us to be successful. And that's another thing. People don't want to get involved, or that want to hold back because they want to get there and they don't like sharing. I find that's really discouraging, but we're talking about the inspirational side of it. There's enough for everyone here.
Yeah, and I've also had, my brother and I have also had, well, it's not really good mentioning it, but I have to mention it. There were some very difficult situations, difficult people. And, you get to learn and understand that, is this part of the journey? Well, if it was plain sailing, we wouldn't learn anything from it. But I think that on some situations, some circumstances can be very challenging to the individual. And also, I understand, can bring them down. That is very sad, because there are some people in the world, and it has to be said, who want to be number one. They want to be up there, and anyone that threatens their position in life, they will make sure that they don't get up there. But you have to understand that this is going to happen in life. This is a cert. And you get to realize that it's okay. I don't need these people. I don't want to be around these people because of the negative energies or their own aspirations. Me, I, myself. No, the world is about, we have to look after ourselves, but also about connecting with other people. And there is a certain magic with that. And I think that if we didn't go through these difficult situations, we wouldn't have anything to write about.
Absolutely, Philip.
Yeah, because you look in the commercial world and you find that a lot of the stories and the films and everything are based on a lot of situations where people love it when they find, my goodness, they've gone through that, they've gone through this is incredible. But I think on a deeper level, it teaches us that as humans going through, this experience on Earth, I think from our perspective, we realize that we're not really any different from anyone else.
No.
And that we take strength and pride in knowing that someone else has gone through those challenges and survived them.
Yes.
It's very sad when some people don't survive that journey, but a lot of people do. And I think that it's hugely inspirational to not just the old people, but also the young people as well. Those people coming into this world and, met with a lot of challenges. Because everything's all now media and commercial, and a lot of the young people want to be up there straight away. They don't want to work for it. Sir Christopher Lee, the late Sir Christopher Lee, said in a program I watched, very inspirational, that he, as an actor, was sweeping behind the stages, and and he had to work his way up. And it wasn't about his face or the way he looked; it was about building his way up, working his way up, and being very grateful and humbled because of that experience. And I think that's another important factor that we have to realize, that being grateful and humbled and honoring that, even through the difficulties that we've had, is very, very important. Yes.
Absolutely. And like you say, it's all very well, everyone sees you when you've made it, but do they actually realize the struggle?
Yes, that's right. It's been, yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
when they find out that you've been through it, it
Mhm.
kind of relieves them in a way because they're not the only one going through that.
Absolutely.
And I think it helps people. I know it sounds very crazy, but people love it when they watch films about someone starting from nothing, going through all
Mm.
this real difficult situations, and then becoming successful. I think that teaches us that what they're saying in that message is nothing is impossible. You can do it. You have the power, the force, you have the energy to do this. And inspiration is a part of that. And do I get, dispirited? Yes, I do. I have my
Yeah.
off days, not on a negative level, but, trying to drum up that inspiration or that energy. But what I do, as I said, is I listen to music or I watch a film and I then feel inspired and, I feel like, wow, this is incredible. So I think it's really important the varied differences of strength in life. If you have a dream, work towards that dream. Never give up on it. And you'll know if that dream is genuine. And I have to say genuine because it has to come from deep inside. It has to come from within you. And there is a need. And you'll find this. It's like, I'm not taking that projection. I'm going to try someone else. I may
Absolutely.
cry and sit down. It's lovely to have a good cry sometimes to get it all out your system. And then you think, I'm going to give it another go. And I'm going to push my way through there. That 100-meter hurdle, I can do that. I don't think I can now, but I could give it a go.
Yes.
I might break my hip.
Don't want you doing that.
Yeah, no, but it's there.
Yeah.
So, the message is very clear. You'll have negative people. You'll
Of
still have them
course.
that want to try and bring
Yeah.
you down. But we just have to get past that point and think, well, you have an opinion. I don't quite respect the opinion, but I just have to move on from that. Because sometimes some people can be very hurtful and negative. But remember, they're the people who may have their own issues
Yes.
and can't be bothered to do anything, or get a little bit green-eyed of envy because they can see you doing something, and the only form of communication that they have within them is attack. So we just have to bypass that sometimes. It does hurt, but
Yeah.
we learn through experience.
Yes. Reflection, isn't it? Of
That's
their
right.
inner.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah,
Reflecting their own needs really onto someone else
that's right.
when they're not
Yes,
met.
that's right.
And life is a
Yes.
journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a journey of experience. That's how we learn. So,
Yes,
yes,
that's right.
absolutely.
I think and feel that from birth to our ultimate physical departure, it is about creating memories and experiences.
Hmm.
Shakespeare always said, didn't he, that life is like actors on a stage, and at the end, when the curtain comes down, they take a bow. And I think on the other side, we'll shake hands and said, "Well done, you've done a good job. You were a little bit too harsh down there. I have a word with you about that, but job well done." And I think that when push comes to shove, I like to see that. I think Shakespeare was very right in his
Absolutely.
analogy of what life is all about.
Yes. So you're a very accomplished author. And what are you currently working on, if you're allowed to say?
There's been several other television shows that my brother and I are going to be appearing on,
Hmm.
and I won't say too much about that.
Okay.
And also I'm working on, well, 3 books. I've got to get 2
Wow.
books completed by contract with 2 other publishers by the end of this year, and I'm working on another one that is hopefully will be finished late next year. So it's kind of tough, and even I'm like, oh, one minute you're begging to be published all those years ago, and scratching it. Anything, and then all of a sudden what is beautiful is when they come to you and say, can you write a book
Yeah.
for me? And I was like, wow, I'm very honored and very grateful and very humbled for all the opportunities that I have and my brother has. I
Mm.
never take anything for granted. I think it's really very important to know that being humbled and being honest to yourself and truthful to yourself, this will eventually drive you forward. Even though you get rejected, and don't get me wrong, I still send some articles out and they say, no, I don't like this. If you've got something else, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
like it's not their cup of tea. Some people like, ham sandwiches, and other people like cress and egg. it's where it is.
Absolutely. So what resources do you recommend, daily tips, tools, to anyone that wants to become an author?
One of the things I would do is, if you're writing a book, make sure you plan it. It's good to have an idea of chapter listings, and when you have chapter listings, then put briefly in each chapter listing what you want to talk about and allow it to flow. The other thing is that to find the publisher, you have Amazon today. Make sure that I'm being published by other publishers. I have used Amazon on several occasions to reprint certain books that were published by publishers because it's still a little bit of a source of income, not a lot. But there are other publishers out there that you can approach. Don't go to a publisher that asks for money. Find a publisher who will inspire you. And even if it takes a lot of time, get what they call the Writers and Artists Yearbook, especially as Google search on the internet with regards to publishers, specific publishers to your forte, what you're writing about, your genre, as it were. And keep doing it. Keep sending your books out. Just believe in it. And eventually that will come along. If you give up, you don't want to get down the road 5 years later and say, where I could have been today if I had carried on doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Because you'll be surprised. Absolutely. Never regret. Keep doing it. You don't want to regret saying, oh, I should have done this. Well, do it. Do it.
Absolutely. So where can the listeners buy your books, find you online? What's your website, Philip?
The books are on Amazon, as is everything in the world is on Amazon. That's the easiest way to get hold of them. They have been in the bookshops before, but most of my books are out of print, and there's new ones now out there. They can get them from Amazon. And the website, my brothers and I website, is www.thekinsellatwins.com, and have a look at that. So www.thekinsellatwins.com. Just want to say to all of you lovely souls out there, believe in yourself. Find the courage. It's in your heart. It's in your soul. If you really believe in something, you can do it. So go out and do it.
Thank you for sharing your courageous journey with us today. By doing so, you have helped so many others. Philip Kinsella.
Thank you very much, Anita. God bless you. And I'm very honoured to come on your show.
Oh, my absolute pleasure having you here. So what is your definition of courage?
Walk through that fire, not physically, but spiritually. Just walk through it and know that you are the sum total of all that is and all that will ever be. You are God and God is you. You're part of this force. Believe in that.